Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome back to New York Islanders franchise mode here in NHL 25. So last episode, if you did not catch it, we had the final draft and re-sign stage, and we pretty much have our team maintained, which is a great sign, of course, going into next season. However, we were looking into maybe making some potential upgrades this offseason, but I just realistically don't think it is possible because our right wing side, obviously not the strongest on paper, was kind of thinking maybe we could use an offensive upgrade, but it seems like around the league, there's not a lot of good right wingers out there. Aside from that, we were looking at maybe making another defensive adjustment, which we probably will still sign ourselves one free agent defenseman and maybe a depth defenseman, but that's probably all we'll sign this offseason just because we pretty much have a full-on roster as is already. I'm just hoping that it's enough to get our team off to a good start this season, but obviously if we don't make the playoffs in the last season, maybe not the end of the world, but at the same time we do kind of want to try and still see if we have it in us to potentially go on a run this year. So this last year is going to kind of suck if we miss the playoffs, but if we do make the playoffs, maybe we'll have one more chance to get that Stanley Cup. So with that said, let's get in your guys' comments, see what you guys have to say about last episode, and we will get into the final free agency portion of this franchise mode and then also start up the final season. So the first and only comment is from Sour Taku, who says, might as well run with the lineup you have. If you make the playoffs, great. If not, whatever. When looking at those top six defensemen, pay attention to their awareness, as Rutu's is quite low for his position. And yeah, I guess we do need to take awareness into account when we sign ourselves that top six defenseman, because if we look at what our defensive core looks like right now, I briefly, showed you guys before, but we have Holmstrom and Schaefer as that top two. Likely it will be Ekblad playing with Smith on that second pairing because Smith is currently an RFA at the moment. And then it will be Svedberg, who is a rookie coming from the AHL, playing with whoever we sign. And of course, we'll sign ourselves a depth defenseman as well, but yeah, we don't have really a ton of cap space either. That's another thing. Technically, once we get these RFAs signed, I'm guessing we will still have at least a decent amount of value where we could still bring in people via free agency and also maybe via trade or something like that during the season. But right now, obviously, I'm not too sure on who still should be traded away from this team and what we should bring in. So we probably will basically keep it with what we have right now and kind of see how the team simulates in the first 2 months before we decide to make any adjustments if there's any that need to happen. So first and foremost, I think we are going to let these guys just sit as RFAs. Hopefully Smith doesn't get qualified, but hoping they don't cost us too much. And that means we need to go into free agency now and find ourselves a cheap top six defenseman and also a depth option as well. So let's find one that isn't going to cost too much, but has actually good awareness, like Sour Taku was mentioning, if there was one out there. So we'll look for probably like a 78, 79 if possible. Axelson is a top six defenseman. This guy's 25 years old. 84 defensive awareness isn't bad, but it is a little bit low. Does have good shot blocking and stick checking. Does want a bit too much more money than I would be willing to pay for a 79, I feel like. Is there anybody on like a contract offer? Hemingway 1.425, but he's 37 years old. Don't really like that. I was looking at Ollie before, I think. He's got 83 defensive awareness. He is an OFD though, so not really want an OFD on that top six if possible. There's also Luis Goulet, who is that enforcer defenseman I was looking into. He actually has really solid awareness, 86 defensive awareness. Shot blocking solid. His stick checking is a bit low, but he technically is better defensively than a lot of the other dudes we've seen. And he's only played 33 career NHL games at this point at 27 years old, I guess. Wow. He didn't play any games for 5 years because he was just a healthy scratch in the minors, and then he finally made the NHL. That's actually kind of insane. Like, was he drafted? No, he was undrafted in 2041, heads to free agency, doesn't get signed in 41-42, all the way up until 45-46, where he makes his debut with Wilkes-Barre, plays 2 years there, gets a chance at the NHL for 33 games, and that's where he currently is. I kind of really like that story, just because he seems like a guy that has fought through a lot of adversity, so I think he's going to be that top six defenseman we're going to bring in. So let's give him exactly what he's asking for. He's going to immediately accept, which is nice. I think it's okay to have an enforcer defenseman. That's something we don't really have, is a lot of physicality on that blue line, I guess. And we'll also find ourselves a depth defenseman with some decent awareness as well. Maybe Pecker? 83 defensive awareness isn't the craziest. Savage, who used to play with us, does have really good defensive awareness, 87. Has played with New Jersey and Columbus since leaving us, even though we did trade him to Anaheim 1 year, I think. Or he signed with Anaheim. Maybe we'll bring back Savage, but he actually is listed as a top 6, so I guess not. I kind of need somebody that's actually listed as a depth defenseman, or I'll still complain. Somebody like Funk, 82 of defensive awareness is still kind of low. I would prefer somebody with better defensive awareness than that. 83 for Gunderson. Let's actually sort maybe by defensive rating and see if there's somebody that's really good and low overall. 75 overall. This guy used to play with us. Actually, no, 75 speed. This guy is actually a 79, so he'd be a top 6. If we're looking more into the depth defender range, I guess Curtis Fitzgerald would be a good one, at least for the awareness portion. Shot blocking and stick checking doesn't look crazy. Aside from that, Burmistrov is a depth defenseman, 87 defensive awareness, but he's only a 76, and he's also 33 years old at this point. Don't know about that, to be honest. Let's see, is there anybody else with good defensive ratings? There's a 77 at 28 in Alcock. 86 defensive awareness is pretty good. 85 shot blocking, 82 stick checking. That's probably what I want. Only 950k as well, so this guy's going to be our depth defenseman. He only wants a 2-way contract as well, which is kind of nice. So let's just give it to him, and he will jump in as a depth defenseman for his team. So defense has been addressed. We have our 3 RFAs currently holding out. They should accept relatively soon. And yeah, we have still a decent chunk of cap space right now. So I think we're in a pretty good spot, obviously, to still make moves in this final season if our team is underperforming or there's a weakness on it. So let's go maybe to the end of the month and see if any RFAs accept. And if nobody has, maybe we'll go into them and see if we can negotiate with them a bit more. But yeah, I'm hoping that nobody qualifies them just because I would prefer to give them less money than long-term money, basically. I'm just going to keep on declining these trade offers because people are trying to just give us picks for prospects and stuff right now, which obviously at this stage, I don't think it really matters, of course, because we're not going to have another draft, but they're kind of weird offers. Like 2 third-rounders for 2 prospects is not really what I would do anyways, just because Gove is still a decent enough prospect where he could have a chance to play as a depth option for our NHL team. Let's decline that. I don't think we needed any depth forwards, but if we did need any depth forwards, we could obviously address that still later on. Axelson, Louis in this for a second, and Jensen, no thank you. Jensen's going to likely be a plane in our lineup this season, I think. 2 second-rounders for Kagorodov, a 4th and a 5th. Not going to take that, especially at that cap hit. And last day of the month, a 3rd and Boo for a 4th and a 5th. No thank you. All right, let's see if those asking prices came down at all. Also, I said in the last episode, potentially looking into a new coach. I guess we do still need an associate coach, which I didn't offer yet, so that kind of sucks that I didn't end up doing that. I completely forgot about it. Is there still an associate coach out there that might make sense? Maybe like that Kames guy, because he's at 52 right now. There's also Jakob Kames. Damn, there's 2 Kames? Yeah, there's 2 guys with the same last name that literally both fit our team kind of decently right now. So I guess we'll look for a Dominic, because he is a little bit younger too. And we will try and get him in as our associate coach for the time being. We'll see if we make any other coaching adjustments throughout the season. But at this stage, we just need to make sure we have at least some coaches on our team. All right, so coaches is dealt with. Let's double check these RFAs. Obviously, they haven't accepted yet, but their asking prices probably have dropped. Lysak, what are you wanting now? Only 1.8. You know what? That's a good deal to me. We'll take it. Hybert, what are you wanting at this point? 1.8 as well. Basically the same contract. You know what? You got it as well, my man. I could have knocked it down maybe more, but oh well. And then Smith, what are you wanting? Still only a 1-year deal now. 5.3. I could probably knock it down a touch. Let's see if we can knock it down to like maybe something like 4.875 just to free up a little bit of cap space. But we probably will be right around like $7 million in cap space, which is pretty good. And that should be able to net us some decent players if we decide to make any trades throughout this season, which is good. So did Smith accept is the question. Or are we going to still be in a little bit of a negotiation war with him, so to speak? Hames is on board, good to see. And Smith rejected the offer, so maybe I'll just give him what he's asking for at this point, because I'm not a douchebag. I'll just give him what he wants. It's not like it's that much more technically than what we were offering him anyways. So let's see, what is he wanting now? 4.85. He's literally asking for now what I was literally just offering him, I think, which is funny. He does have that organizational interest, so technically I think I can drop this down more, but I'm just going to give him 4.85, and he immediately accepts it. So we have $8.8185 million in cap space, which is a lot more than I expected, and there is a lot of areas we could upgrade throughout the season if we get into problems. Obviously, we have 3 NHL caliber goalies if Olver gets a chance. We could still trade away a goalie if they aren't performing well. Defensively, Goulet and Alcock will both be up here, so that's nice. Forward-wise, we got a bunch of players. There's a good chance that some people might be in the minors to start the season, but that's okay, I think. So we'll go with that. And we'll see what our team's looking like. But yeah, there's a good chance that some people will be sent to the minors. But obviously, if we get in injury trouble, we could call some people up. Some people might have to go through waivers, though, which is not ideal. But I am curious to see what our team's going to look like at the start of the year. I'm going to just remove everything from the block because these AI offers are just kind of frustrating when there's too much of them. But I'm excited to see what this team could do this year. I think, obviously, we should be still good enough to make the playoffs. But once we're in the playoffs, this team always seems to kind of just take a bit of a dip lately. So I'm not too sure if our team is good enough to go far. Maybe we could be a cheese team like I was hoping we'd be last year. But honestly, at this point, I honestly don't know if I care too much if we win a Stanley Cup in this last season. I mean, if we do win a cup, I will obviously be happy. But if we don't win one, I mean, I'm kind of numb to the pain at this point just because this team has had so much lack of success when it comes to the playoffs. But it'll be interesting when we get to like the record book and all that stuff, looking at everybody's playoff stats and career stats and all that type of thing. But a lot of these guys have been here for quite a while at this point, yet we still haven't found ways to win, which is weird. All right, let's get these lineups set up and see who is going to be starting in the NHL and who's going to be in the AHL. So, in terms of our goaltending right now, it's still going to be Irwin and Bergenheim, and Olver will be in the AHL. He does go through waivers now, which means... And there's also Canzanella, who's actually almost an NHL goalie too, which is pretty insane. But basically, if Olver is ready to take that jump, and basically say if Irwin or Bergenheim gets hurt, we might have to make a trade then with one of those involved, so that way we could get Olver up. If for some reason one of these guys is playing terribly within the first few months, like in this episode alone, one of these guys is playing really bad, and we have to call up Olver, maybe we think about trading away whoever was really bad out of these two goalies. So there is a good chance that we might change goalies throughout the season. I don't really know which goalie I would want to move because Irwin's been a better playoff goalie, but Bergenheim has been a really good regular season goalie. I mean, he has a Vezina already at this point, so we'll see what we end up doing when it comes to that point. But that's definitely going to be one of the toughest decisions in this final season. The good thing is if we trade away one of these goalies, we might be able to net ourselves a decent return, especially on the offense, which might need more help. So that's not too bad, I guess. From a defensive standpoint, Holmstrom, Schaefer, Smith, Ekblad, Svedberg, Goulet, and we will call up Alcock as that other option. I have to send somebody down on offense, but that's okay. Right wing-wise, Harris, Schmalz, Dempsey, Hybert, Lysak. Howes is back in the minors again. He'll probably stay in the minors for the time being. Depends on if there's a person listed as a fourth liner that shouldn't be. And then on the left wing side of things, we have Ragnarsson, Kazanov, Crane, Trotter, Gerard, Terry, and Markstrom. Damn, we have a lot of wingers. Markstrom's technically a depth forward, which is good. Is there anybody not listed as a depth forward here? Hybert might have to go back to the minors, depending. Just because he might complain about his ice time if he's scratched. So I think we will call up Howes maybe, just because we need an actual depth forward. And then we'll go back over to the centers. We have Mackinnon, Ashton, and Jocelyn. And Jensen's technically ready to go. I should probably have Jensen up here too, hypothetically, which means I need to send down some more players from our NHL team. Not going to send down a single center. Winger-wise, I could, I guess, technically deal with not calling up, technically, Howes. Actually, but I needed to send down Hybert. That means somebody else has to get sent down too on the wingers. Last year was Terry who was in the minors. I think it's still going to be probably Terry. Yeah, I think it's going to still be Terry for the time being. We're going to just do that. And we have to send down one more player still too, apparently, which is kind of insane. So one more forward has to get sent down. So that's 4 forwards on that side. Oh my god. I guess Markstrom? Or do I want to even call up House whatsoever? You know what? Maybe we won't even call up House. We will let him sit in the minors and just do a swap like this. Just got to make sure we have at least a depth defenseman and a depth forward in our lineup. So let's go best lines here and see if everybody's in a good spot at least. So first line, Ragnarsson, Mäkinen, Kazanov. Not terrible, but I would prefer to have somebody that could score goals consistently higher up, which means I would probably lean more towards maybe something like this. I mean, Schmaltz is a good goal scorer despite not being a full-on sniper, right? He wasn't a sniper? Yeah, he was a two-way. Dempsey being that low in the lineup, though, is kind of questionable. Trotter being that low in the lineup is also very questionable. So we probably need to reconfigure this even more than I was thinking. Dempsey should not be playing center for sure. We should be probably leaning towards, how is Schmaltz, a checking forward? Schmaltz on the third line, our fourth line might be okay, but I don't really like that spot fully for him. And then from a right wing perspective, Lysak's there. I don't really want to be scratching Jensen in his first season. So I'm probably going to lean to putting Schmaltz on the wing, which means I think Lysak's going to get sent down and House is going to be our depth forward instead. So we could go with Jensen on this spot. I know he is a sniper, but we might as well. Just because I don't want to scratch him. Lysak will definitely complain about ice time. So yeah, we're going to send Lysak down just to at least start off the season. And we will call up House in that spot. So that way we don't have anybody complaining about ice time. We have a lot of guys that are going to be competing for roster spots in the potential playoffs and all that. But I think this is going to be an interesting looking team to say the least. So now our offense is at least decently set up. Defensive core, I prefer Smith playing with Ekblad. So we will go with something probably, let's see. They're both two-ways, so I guess it doesn't really matter who's on which wing. We'll go with Goulet and Svedberg. Svedberg's up to an 80, which is nice, so that's going to help our defensive core quite a bit. And then from a goaltending perspective, still the same. Scratches, these guys are all depth forward / defenders, so that's all good. Yeah, I think the NHL team looks good. Let's double check the special teams. Just make sure we have guys in the right spot. Trotter could take some power play time. I don't really care too much on that. Yeah, that should be fine. Defensively, that's a lot of forwards on this unit. I'd prefer maybe a defenseman on one of these units, but at this point, we don't really care too much. So let's just leave it like this, to be honest. Pellenkill, Jocelyn, and Kazanov is good because they're both two-ways. Ashton, Ragnarsson, Schmaltz, and Crane. Yeah, okay, that works, I guess, with me. And in terms of the AHL, let's just make sure we have the right guys in. Everybody is not scratched, so that's good. We have a lot of dudes we could use as an NHL player of the season. So if we get into major trouble, we have obviously Terry, who should probably be an NHLer. Menino's actually not a bad depth forward. He has been a depth forward for us for the last few years. So he's an okay option. Hybrid should obviously be an NHL. Same with Lysak. McMillan's a depth forward pretty much around. Grummet Morris. There's also Cyrus Blanchard, who's actually listed as a fourth liner as a rookie. He is a sniper, though, so we'd probably prefer him to be on like a third line. But if we do decide to trade away somebody like Dempsey or something like that, Blanchard might get an opportunity. From a defensive standpoint, there's not really anybody to call up that. In that standpoint, there is Gove as well as a forward. He's playing defense at the moment, which is probably not a great idea. But we're going to have to make it work, I guess. And then goalie's over and Canzanello. Alright, at least we have a lot of guys in the AHL we could call up if we get into trouble. Or we can make more trades involved with those type of players. But I think that's where we're going to run for the starts of the year. And I'm excited to see what Jensen could do. I think he's going to be a decent player. Obviously, he should probably be in a higher role just because he's a sniper. But his defensive stats aren't the worst on paper. Probably could use some work, but I think for right now, we'll keep him in that fourth line spot. Obviously, I could move him up and move somebody like Harris to that center spot instead, maybe. But I'm excited. I think this is a good-looking team still. just because we have at least some good depth in the AHL, but we still are kind of lacking at high-end talent. Like, the best player on this team by far right now is Ragnarsson, and also, I guess, Schaefer and Holmstrom in terms of overall. So, is this team good enough to make the playoffs? I'm not too sure. It probably is, but is it good enough to go on a run? I'm not too sure on that. So, that's all nice and set up and ready to go. Don't think we really need anything before we start simulating. So, I think with that said, we are ready to get into this final season. We'll probably only simulate to like December the 1st or maybe January the 1st in this episode, but it really just depends on how this team is simulating, because we don't want to simulate too much and then this team easily misses the playoffs, or if we simulate too much and then basically we don't really know what to do in terms of adjustments. But anyways, let's see what our coach has to say about our roster on paper. First and foremost, though, let's do a little preseason focus and let's do conditioning, because we have an old team at this point. And in terms of our season goal, what does he think? He thinks we're good enough to make the playoffs again, so let's agree with that. And let's hope that we can make it back to the playoffs again and hopefully go on a random run in this final season, because that'd be pretty awesome. So, wonder how this preseason is going to go. Not that it really impacts the actual season itself, but kind of curious on who's going to show up for us in this preseason. We win the first game, second game, third game we lose in OT, then we lose in regulation. New Jersey's a loss. This is kind of reminiscent of the regular season team we normally see, which is inconsistencies. And we're going to finish the preseason 3-3-1, which is pretty solid. Let's take a look at some stats from the preseason, of course, and then we will get into this final season and see if this team is good enough to start off the season on a hot note and propel ourselves into a playoff spot by the end of the year. So in terms of our player stats for forwards, Crane actually had a really good preseason, which is nice. Obviously, he's 38 years old at this point, though, so I honestly don't know what to expect from him this year. I know he's been a good player for us for a long time, but is this going to be a year where he can maybe reach 1,300 points, or is he going to just keep falling off? Because he has been falling off defensively a little bit as of late. Had a good playoff showing last year for the most part, though, so hopefully the captain continues that. Harris is also playing pretty good, apparently, despite being 41. So apparently a lot of our old guys are actually pretty good in preseason, which is good to see. From a defensive standpoint, Smith had 3 points. Looks pretty good on defense. The top pairing was really bad, apparently, but don't expect that from the actual season. And in goaltending-wise, Irwin was definitely the better of the two. So yeah, we probably won't simulate too much in this episode, just because I want to kind of make sure we have the right call if we do trade away one of these goalies. Like, if Irwin's playing absolutely terrible and Bergenheim's doing really good, we probably trade away Irwin and call up, obviously, Olver. If Bergenheim's playing terribly and Irwin's doing good, we trade away Bergenheim and call up Olver. Or we just keep the goalies the same. If both of them are doing really well, we honestly could just keep Olver as a third-string goalie in the AHL and call him up potentially for the playoffs if the other two goalies are playing like shit. So with that said, let's get into this final season. Kind of sucks that it's the final season, but at the same time, it's a little bit of a sense of relief for me, just because this team hasn't had its success so far. So who knows, maybe we'll have a good run in this last year. So let's go to the end of October and see how we do in this first month of the season, and maybe that will set the tone for the rest of the season, as we lose 6-3 in the first game. That's not great. And there is a guy on waivers, Jimmy Thomas. I think I've seen this guy before. He is an okay depth defenseman, but he's got very low awareness. Does have good shot blocking and stick checking, but if that awareness was higher, he would be a solid depth defenseman, but don't need him. We do beat Florida 4-2. We beat Chicago 5-0, so that's a nice convincing victory. We do lose to the Blue Jackets, so right now it looks like we're still kind of that same team that we've been the last few years, where we suffer wins and then loses and all that stuff. But we do win 2 in a row there as over Utah and Vegas. Just going to decline these trade offers. Game against the Nashville Predators to wrap up the month is a 3-1 loss. So we start off the season in our first 7, 4-3. And like I said, that's a little bit showing of what our team has been like the last few years. Inconsistent, but at least we have one more win and loss at the moment. Like, we don't need to light the world on fire and be like the Hurricanes, who are 7-1 right now. We just need to be able to at least win maybe 2 games to every loss, basically. So it's not a terrible start, but obviously I would hope for some more. We have played the least amount of games in our division at the moment, though, so maybe this month could be very telling for the rest of the season instead of that first month. So let's go to December the 1st and see what we do in the month of November. This is pretty important here early on to see if our team is actually going to be good or not. We beat Montreal, lose to Winnipeg, and lose to Minnesota, so still kind of have that inconsistencies right now. We do beat New Jersey 1-0, nice defensive game. Obviously, we'll take a look at the goalie stats relatively soon, too, to see if anybody's underperforming, and that's not what I wanted to see in this final season, because it is for multiple weeks at a time, because it says we're November 13th right now, so Holmstrom will be out with a sore foot till December the 4th, which means he's out, for like 2-3 weeks, which is unfortunate. Let's go replace player, but I do really not want having my best offensive defenseman injured this early in the season. So we lost to Tampa, but beat Florida. Then we lose to Calgary, but beat Toronto. This team seems very similar to last year. We just don't go on large winning streaks, it seems like. It's always like a win and a loss, and it's never like, hey, we just won 20 in a row or something. But we do beat the Rangers there, so it's a 2-game win streak. We do lose to Philadelphia, though. Crane has now been injured with an upper body injury, but it's only for like a week. Let's go replace player on that. And San Jose, we beat them 2-0. So 11-9 isn't crazy, but we are in a wild card spot, and we have still played the least amount of games in our division at this point in time. But it looks like our division is going to be an absolute war zone this season, because the Devils are in last place on 19 points. Hurricanes are on first place in 28 points. So there's only 9 points separating those two teams. So this might be a really tight season, potentially, which is kind of scary when we're winning one game and then losing one game. So we need to go on a nice little win streak if possible here before we end this episode. So let's do one more month in December, and let's see if we could find that consistency. If we could go on like an 8-game winning streak, that'll be very telling for me if this team actually can win games. If we keep on flip-flopping, we might be a team that barely makes it into the playoffs again, just like last year. So let's go to the end of this month and see what we do, and then we'll take a look at some stats. And there's another injury. Schaefer's been injured with an injured elbow. Don't know if that means a bruised elbow or what. It's only out for a week or so, but we have been suffering some pretty big injuries here early in the season, as Holmstrom's already back, so I guess that just literally put him in the spot that Schaefer was, which I guess for right now is okay. Maybe not, actually. Let's put somebody else there for the time being, just so I can kind of readjust this, because I would prefer Alcock to be playing where Schaefer was, and Holmstrom back on that power play, so to speak. So let's go with that, and that is set up and ready to go. Perfect. Just the amount of injuries to start the season have been a little bit concerning, but it kind of makes sense with how old our team is at this point. So Markstrom was playing second line left wing. That's actually not a bad spot for him, considering he is a sniper. Crane is already back, though. And let me stop the sim again, because for some reason it likes to advance to the month still afterwards. We are on a winning streak now all of a sudden, so the team is starting to find its game. We are on a 4-game winning streak since the San Jose game, and we technically won 6 of our last 7 games, so maybe we're starting to finally find what I've been looking for a while. Obviously, there's still probably underlying problems, but there's another 2 wins in a row. This team is kind of finding a way to cook, which is weird. Usually this team does not go on big winning streaks. We kind of just flounder our way into a playoff spot. But right now we're looking good, despite Schaefer being out for those games as well. So, nice to see that. Game against Detroit in Detroit. Will we continue the winning streak? The answer to that is no, of course. So Schaefer comes back and we immediately lose. And now Holmstrom's been injured again, out with a sore knee. So those top 2 defensemen, Schaefer and Holmstrom, have suffered some injuries this season, which is not great. And of course, after that big winning streak, we're now all of a sudden on a losing streak. But we do beat Montreal after I said that, of course, too. Alright, kind of a weird sim so far to start the season. Holmstrom is back. That's good. We will get him back in instead of Alcock. Alcock's going to get a chance to play a lot of games because these injuries here early on, which is not bad. I don't mind getting a depth defenseman in occasionally, just so that way he's at least getting some playing time. Final few games of the month. Vancouver's fired their head coach, who I recognize his name. I feel like he used to be in our organization, but I could be wrong. Detroit's 4-3 loss. Buffalo's a 5-2 loss, and Edmonton's a 4-1 win. So not necessarily the craziest start to the season, but 19-14-1 is not bad. We are in that last wildcard spot, and we have games in hand on a lot of teams in our division. So I feel like we're in a pretty solid spot, but obviously there's still a lot of season left to go. So we cannot start closing a shit ton of games. We can only hopefully go up from here. So with that said, let's take a look at some stats and see what's going good for us right now. So in terms of individual team stats, our offense has been atrocious. We are 21st in the league, so we're still not scoring a ton, but we are 6th in goals against, which is fantastic. 23rd on the power play, which is also very bad, and in 9th on the penalty kills. So this team continues to be more of a defensive team than an offensive one, which is interesting. So that means both the goalie numbers might be decent so far at this point in the season. So let's take a look at that and see what's going on with this team at the moment. So Crane's leading us in points, which is pretty crazy considering he's the oldest one, I think, on the team. 27 points in 32 games. Actually, he's the second oldest, I guess, after Harris, but he's been good. Ragnarsson and Harris both have 23 points. Jocelyn, Mackin, and Trotter, and Kazanov all on 22. So I know we're not necessarily a good offensive team, but we have good depth scoring, if that makes sense. So we aren't getting like that high-end scoring that's showing that we're a good team. But like you have a bunch of guys on 22 plus points. Even Ashton's on 19 and Dempsey's on 17. So it's not one guy showing up, it's the entire team, which kind of makes me feel better about our goals for at this point. Because, yeah, just a lot of guys are stepping up. Like Jocelyn's leading us in goals, which is kind of surprising. But technically, I guess, basically our first three lines are all like half a point per game at least, which is not terrible. Schmaltz is only on 9 points, but he isn't getting power play time, and he's also on the fourth line. Does want more ice time, so I would have to find a way to get him onto the power play, or we trade him to upgrade. Like Dempsey's been better for sure, so maybe it's the time we look into upgrading from Schmaltz. I'm not too sure. Jensen's only on 6 points to start his career, but he's an even 0, so he's not been a bad player by any stretch. Gerard's on 5 points. Markstrom's on 1 goal in 2 games. I'll take it. I'll take it. So I like our depth scoring, but obviously it does fall off to the fourth line, and guys like Schmaltz need more power play time. It might be our power play that's been helping us a bit too, it looks like. From a defensive standpoint, Holmstrom's on 10 points in 21 games. He's already missed literally 13 games due to injury. Svedberg's on 9 to start his career, so not a bad start for the rookie defenseman. Schaefer on 9 points as well. He's missed 4 games. Ekblad on 8 points. Smith on 7. Goulet on 6 and a +6. The enforcer defenseman is actually not that bad whatsoever. I really like the way he started off this year because he had no points in 33 games last year with Pittsburgh, but looking like a pretty solid fit here for our team. And then Alcock on 4 assists in 17 games. Not bad. Goaltending-wise, Irwin's on a 916 and Bergenheim's on a 924. I have no problems with the goalies right now. As of right now, I don't think we need to make a goalie adjustment. That means Olver will probably continue to play in the AHL until at least the playoffs, maybe. So, unless those goaltending numbers drop off a cliff. But both goalies have been really good. Our defensive play has been good. Our depth scoring, I would say, is good. But we don't have a guy over a point per game. And that's the main reason why we're not scoring as much as other teams around the league. In terms of the rest of the league at the moment as well, if we want to take a look at this briefly, Lance Smith is leading the league for Carolina. Him and Darren Bates, I think his name was. Yeah, Darren Bates in Colorado at 47 as well. Alright, doesn't seem like a super high scoring season, at least right now. There is some guys that are scoring a lot of goals, though, like Hakkarainen, who's on 31 goals in 35 games. And look who's also up there, Guerin again. I guess he's not going to retire before the series ends, but he has dropped off a cliff, so Jason Guerin, the former New York Ranger who's got all those awards, he's still simulating really good too, but last year he only played 70 games and had 73 points, so quite a down year from there, but he's still going to hit 2,000 points, it looks like, before the series ends at this point, which is pretty insane. I don't think I've seen a 2,000 point player really in quite a while since, I guess, Whaleman stuff in my other franchise modes I've done. Defensively, best defenseman right now is under point per game, so yeah, it seems like around the league, maybe not a lot of offense this year, which is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. Best save percentage among starters right now is Vico with a 931. Yeah, I think it's a defensive season mostly. Like, it seems like it's not as high scoring as some of the years we've seen in the past. So, kind of like that. In terms of goals for goalies, is there anybody? No. Most assists right now is Pronger. Best rookie so far this year is Pielmeyer in Philadelphia, who's 25 years old. but he's also tied with Sloan, who's 23, and McDermott, who's 18. All right. So far, I've been impressed. But obviously, there's still a lot of season left to go, so it's tough to say if this team really needs any adjustments. Like, it does make sense if we find a way to upgrade our offense maybe throughout the season, but maybe we also don't really need to. I feel like next episode we might only simulate to the trade deadline, or we could get the rest of the season done potentially, but I think if the one thing we're looking for is more scoring, we could look for a high-end scorer, or we could kind of just maintain with what we have because we've been getting decent depth scoring. But let's take a look at the block and just see if there's anything interesting at the moment. See if there's anything that would be crazy to bring in this last year, which usually isn't the case. There's usually not too much on the block. But like I said, I've been really liking our depth scoring, so to make a trade right now, I just don't think it's something we need to do, but it might come back to bite us if we don't make a move this season, because we could get to the playoffs and then be a first-round exit. There's a left-wing sniper in Triff. Only 5 goals in 36 games, though. Yikes. That's not much of a sniper whatsoever. This guy's got a high-ass cap hit. Does have 12 goals, which is nice. But yeah, that cap hit is way too much for me. There is our former player, Ronnie Leahy, who's a playmaker. He would actually be tied for the team lead in goals right now if we had him. But he's playing for the Chicago Blackhawks now at this point, after he played a long time in St. Louis. So shout out to Leahy. Aside from that, offensively, there's a guy named Eberle who is a sniper, 8 goals in 34 games. 4-star shooting is pretty solid, but the offensive awareness is a bit low. But still, he's not bad. What else we got here? Columbus has their elite goalie on the block. I'm not really looking into goalies. I was just wanting to see what is out there for maybe helping our offense. But honestly, I feel like maybe staying course for the rest of the season might be okay. But depends on how much we want to simulate the next episode. Because I feel like if we don't do anything, we might regret it. If we do something, it might not do anything for us even. So tough to say. We do have multiple first rounders, I guess, in this last season, or no? No, I don't think we do. I think I have my Edmonton series, I think. But we do have some stuff we can move out in the AHL potentially if we want to upgrade things, because there's definitely a lot of NHL-ready talents on this team. It's just all about finding the piece that we've been looking for, which I don't think we've ever seen really in terms of scorers. There is Hope, who's making $11 million to only have 27 points, which is not good. Pittsburgh, nothing there. San Jose, looks like nothing. Seattle, same thing. I am not really seeing enough. There is an OFD that's making a lot of money, but he's only got 8 points in 36 games. Damn, man, that's a huge drop-off. He is 37 years old, but he's getting 10 less minutes per game, so kind of makes sense where he would drop off, but damn, St. Louis just overpaid a lot on this guy. So, shout out to Mercier, though. Dodge is an OFD. How good is he? 15 points. That's actually pretty solid, but we don't really need an offensive defenseman. We need more of a forward to score goals, not a defenseman. Lockhart, our former guy, again, I mean, we could bring back Lockhart if we really wanted to, but I don't really know if it's something I would absolutely need. He was a very good fit here, Lockhart, but yeah, then we just didn't bring him back. I kind of regret it in a way because I feel like he's not too expensive, but there's also Naslund as a sniper, 9 goals. Does have 4.5-star shooting and solid offensive awareness, but he's not a high-end scorer for a sniper, which is kind of weird. Playoffs, hasn't really played that much, but still solid player. Does have a 1 year left on his contract too. Naslund could be intriguing, but I feel like a lot of players that you have, like Crane already, are the same overall and all that, so I don't know about that one. Utah, just a bunch of prospects. Vancouver, depth defenders. Vegas, nothing there. Washington has Jeffrey still on the block as an OFD. I don't think we need him. And in Winnipeg has nothing. So, yeah, I don't really see too much on the block still at this point. We probably won't simulate the rest of the season in the next episode. We probably still will simulate up to the trade deadline just in case. But this team, I don't think there's a huge issue with the lack of scoring, really. Like, the depth scoring is probably one of the best in the league, my guess. Like, if we take a look at some other teams for fun, if we look at their forwards, Like, let's say somebody like Ashton and Dempsey, who are third line players. They're on 19 and 17 points. How is everybody else's third line looking, actually? Let's actually go via edit lines instead. That might be a bit of an interesting way of doing it. Because I'm kind of curious on if we have the best scoring on the third line with like 19 points. You look at a team like Anaheim, their third line's getting around 15 points at most, so not that bad, I guess. You head to somebody like Boston for their depth scoring 25 points. That's really good. 17 points. Looks like a really good third line scoring in Boston. Buffalo has their third line. A little bit on the lower end side of things, except for Safronov. Nielsen's pretty good. Damn, isn't that the guy who was with us? Yeah, he was. A former draft pick of us. I forgot about this dude. He's been not terrible since leaving us. He's been actually pretty solid with the Flames here early on. So shout out to Michael Nielsen. But yeah, their third line's pretty good. Maybe there is actually some good third lines in terms of scoring too. But I feel like our depth scoring is not bad. It's just not high end. So, But our third line is definitely not the worst third line in the league. So I don't really know if it makes sense to upgrade anything or not. Like, there's good players around the league if we look for them, but they'll cost us probably way more than we are willing to give up. Like, this guy signed for 8 years, but to get a friggin' playmaker like Boma, you're giving up, like, probably multiple first-rounders and high-value prospects. But we would want more of a goal scorer that could snipe some goals in. So, at the moment, actually, who's the worst team in the league? Because maybe we'll look at them and just see if there's anybody that would actually be a good goal scorer on those teams that maybe we could potentially pry away. Vancouver and LA, Montreal. All right. Let's take a look at their lineups for fun just to see if they have somebody out there, potentially. Not that it's necessary that we make a trade, like I said, but it's just in case. So Vancouver, in terms of like a scoring player, I mean, they have a power forward in Lefebvre, but he's only 20 years old, so obviously they're going to not want to move him. Aside from that, they don't really have much. And in LA and Montreal, Montreal doesn't really have a high-end player. So that kind of sucks. Oh well, Los Angeles, same type of thing. Hey, there's the former players. They're like Popov, though. So shout out to Popov. I feel like some of these guys we probably should have held on to longer, but yeah, Popov actually was really good after leaving us. Like, we played him for a little bit, then Dallas he was solid, and he's been pretty solid with the LA Kings too. His plus minus is atrocious, but he's been good offensively. Yeah, I don't really know if it makes sense for us to do anything in terms of upgrades. Like, if we're going to trade for a really good player, it's going to cost us more than we want. Florida's probably in a playoff spot, right? Like, Goddard's 38 points in 36 games. He's really good. I'm curious on how good Florida is right now. I know I'm adding extra time this episode, but it's just because I don't want this to be too short since we are in the final season anyways. Let's take a look at that for a second. Eastern Conference, how is Florida? They're good. They're good. He was -1, so I thought he might not be that good, but yeah, they're in a playoff spot right now anyways. Alright. Looks like our division's definitely the stronger of the two divisions. Looks like the Atlantic is pretty weak. Atlantic, yeah, the Florida Panthers are actually technically first place in the Atlantic on 41 points. Meanwhile, if you head to our Metropolitan Division, we are technically 39 points. So we would be like a top 2 team probably in that Atlantic Division, I think. Our top 4 team at least. So we'd probably be in a similar spot, but I feel like our division's probably stronger. But there's only 11 points separating first and last in the Atlantic. Meanwhile, in the Metro at the moment, there's 14 points separating, so a bit more separation, but definitely still a tight race when you have guys like Washington who are not far back of us, same with New York, and also the Devils. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Arena Calendars Franchise Mode. So in next episode, we'll probably simulate up to the trade deadline. We'll see if this team continues to play decently. Like, if we're still playing great defensively, and we still need a scoring forward, maybe we could still look for that upgrade, but if we don't really need to, like if we have a good enough depth scoring, we might just keep the team mainly the same this season. And then obviously when it comes to playoff time, we just call people up if we get into trouble and send people down if they're not playing that good. So maybe a bit more micromanaging within the system rather than actually trading for stuff we need. Sizing down below, and I'll see you guys next time.